Good morning, everybody. Glad you could be here today. So today we're going to cover using Microsoft Flow with Dynamics 365. So going to have a little bit of slide work. Then I thought we would just get into the product and talk a lot about it. And I want to hear what other people are doing because this is all kind of new to, I think, a lot of us. So I think it'll be good for us to share some experiences here if anybody has them to share. Okay, so my name is Mitch Milam. I am a Dynamics CRM architect. You can reach me at any of these places here, of course. This will be recorded, of course, and be up on my YouTube channel, so I'll email you guys probably later today with a link to the recording, etc., as always. So next week we have a webinar for business rules. So we have a new editor in Dynamics 365 for webinars, or sorry, for business rules. So we're going to be going through that and seeing how that has changed from CRM 2016. And then I haven't worked out the revenue of the webinar schedule for the rest of February. I'm going to be out a couple of weeks and probably, well, I'll let you know as soon as I get everything put together. So a little bit of housekeeping. On the control panel there for the webinar, you can ask a question. You can raise your hand if you want to. If you want to ask a question, just raise your hand and I'll try and see that and open your mic up if you want to talk. So again, webinars can be found on the webinar page. Knowledge Business, my email delivery system for information. Got some free stuff on Knowledge on the for learning plans and things like that. And then I've got the other goodies coming out here shortly as soon as I can get the time to work on it. So let's get started today. So basically today we're going to cover a bit on pricing, which is kind of unusual for me, but I'll explain that in just a second. Some components, some of the design, and then some final thoughts on using Microsoft Flow. So before I get started, can I see a show of hands? How many people have actually used Flow for doing anything at all that's production ready? David? Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Not many people at all, which is probably why you're here. I have not, as a matter of fact, either. I've just been doing lots of experimentation, trying to figure out what we can use it for, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, I usually don't bring up pricing on this because it's totally relevant to most of our conversations. The only reason I have this up here is because there are some criteria that are going to be explicit to the product. The first is with the free version of Flow, you have a limited number of runs per month, and then the checks that you can do are limited to 15-minute increments. With the first plan, you have more runs per month, and then you have a minimum check of 3 minutes, plus it gives you access to other services. And finally, the plan 2 allows you to run a bunch of things per month. The checks come down to 1 minute intervals. We have access to premium services, and then you can have some organizational policy settings, which I haven't got into yet. So here are the services. So at this point in time, there are 91 services that have been configured to work with Microsoft Flow. So as you can see, lots of Microsoft stuff, a lot of third-party vendors. I mean, think about it, 91. That's not all Microsoft stuff. Some of these you will see has a premium tag underneath, such as Salesforce and Chatter and DB2, things like that. So those have the requirement of the higher level of payment plan or subscription to the Flow itself. So most things you can get done with the free version as long as you don't exceed those limitations or you have the constraints put on by the timing and things like that. So keep that in mind. Once you actually pick a service, then you have to pick a trigger that actually starts the ball rolling. And this can really vary, and it will depend on a variety of things. As you can see here, so we've got some Microsoft Common Data Services. There's some Dropbox. There's the Dynamics line that includes 365 financials and then NAV. And then some of the other free ones there. So basically, triggers are generally one of three things that I found. So when something happens, so this could be you do something happen with one of the services, such as like a record being created, a tweet being posted, etc., a blog post, whatever it might be. You can also manually ship or start a flow with the Flow app by starting a button or clicking a button. And then finally, they have a recurring scheduled feature that allows you to wait a specific amount of time or other things and actually start on a time basis. So say I want to create something that launches every hour and does some work, you could do that as well. So that's pretty interesting as well. Here are the triggers that we have right now. So when a record is created, deleted, or updated, and if you get into the financials, when the record is created or modified, and then NEV the same way. So again, you pick your trigger, you pick your service, you pick your trigger, or you can just pick your trigger directly because they're associated with the services. An action is going to tell you what to do next. So your actions are going to be totally dependent on your service. The actions are actually defined by the service. So in this case here, what we're going to do is I'm going to have a trigger of when a record is created. As you see here, I've picked my organization and then the entity I'm looking at. And then from here, I can specify something to do or something to check is generally what it is. So I can add an action, I can do a check on condition, I can add a switch statement, I can do a for loop if whatever the trigger was pull back multiple records, we can do that. The actions are a little bit more substantial. So we can create records, list records out, delete, get, update, etc. So a few things there. And these are just the basic ones that are included out of the box with the Dynamics 365 connector. And by the way, that connector also works with Dynamics CRM 2016 online anyway. And so this one connector will work with both of the packages. So there's a concept of a template. So these are pre-configured things to do that the product team or whoever is creating the connector has or the service has done for you. So basically this is just a template that you can utilize that will get you started doing a specific task. Some of the ones for Dynamics 365 are copy Dynamics CRM account to common data service for customer organizations. When an object is created in Dynamics CRM, create a list inside SharePoint, et cetera, et cetera. So these are just templates that have been pre-configured, and what you do is just take these and start your new flow based on the template, and then you just configure it for your organization and for your specifics. So how it works is you pick the template you want to use. So this one we're going to start by pushing a button. Again, in the mobile app, click on Use this template. Then it's going to ask me if this is what I want to do. So these are the two steps in this one. And then I go and configure the steps. So this one I'm going to manually trigger the flow. I'm going to create a new record, which I have to connect to my organization and then select an entity that I want to create. And then it's going to send a push notification back to the mobile app so that I know it was done. We can also create a flow from scratch. So again, you pick your service/trigger that's going to start this off. Like here's one for Twitter when a new tweet is posted. And then I'm going to do a search for that tweet. So I'm looking for specific things. So if I want to, what they're talking about, like happy hour or the hashtag haiku, love or hate, whatever it might be. Like if you wanted to use MS Dyn 365 or MS Dyn CRM, we could actually pull some things in. We also have the ability within the flow designer to work on our flows, which we'll see, and then we have connections that go to different things. Gateways are actually pointing to on-premises data sources, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. You can create your own services. Now, this seems to be quite a bit of work. You have to do a lot of it's a lot of definition. So because you have to tell Flow how this thing works. So not only do you have to create your custom API, which is a web service, you also have to create the definition for how it should be worked with. And then finally, the admin center will record different, let you set different things within the system. So the on-premises gateway is called the Power BI Enterprise Gateway Service. So if you look in your services on your server, that's what you see. So what happens is you actually get this installation package, which is self-installing executable. You run that on your connection server, and it will actually install this Windows service that you can configure. Currently, it only supports talking to SQL Server and SharePoint. it only, again, will speak to an on-premises. So you can't use this service to speak to another online service. We have to worry about things like that. It creates an outbound only connection to the Azure Service Bus. That's where all this stuff magically happens behind the scenes. So all it does is it will look inside SQL Server and SharePoint. It will pull data out and shove it up into the Azure Service Bus. There's no way to, at this point in time, evidently, to get the data to push back down. So it's only going out of your on-premises to online. So the big question here is, what should you do with Flow? So this is a scene out of Independence Day. And so pretty much if your scientists were so preoccupied on whether they could, if they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. And that came from Lucas Alexander, that blog post there. He has a pretty good blog post about executing Dynamics 365 workflows from a Microsoft Flow. And he brings up some pretty good points in there. And this will be in the show notes that I'll email out everybody later. So realistically, if you're doing stuff inside of CRM, keep it inside of CRM. Oh, I'm sorry. Munir said that's Jurassic Park. You're right. I get my Jeff movies confused. Sorry, folks. Jurassic Park, not Independence Day. You're right. I was like, that name doesn't necessarily sound familiar. Okay, thanks, sir. Anyway, so the reason I say that is the designer is a little bit on the clunky side, quite honestly. And what we really need to kind of remember is what we're doing with Flow is we're moving data between dissimilar systems. Has anybody ever heard or used of an online service called If This Then That? Anybody ever heard of that? A few of you? Okay. Yeah. So that is a very similar package. In fact, the Microsoft Flow and If This Then That are exactly the same type of service. And what it does is it allows you again to pick a trigger and then have it go and do something. Like I signed up for this course a few weeks ago, or actually a few months ago now. And what it was how to do stuff to build your email list. And what they wanted you to do is actually send yourself a text message every morning at 7 o'clock that's saying I'm gonna add people to my mailing list. It's pretty much really what it was. And so I went and created this thing. It was free, and it literally sent me a text message every morning at 7 o'clock saying, go do this work. That's all it did. You can do the same thing with Microsoft Flow, to a certain degree. But the idea here is you're connecting to dissimilar things. If you're doing things within CRM, just stay within CRM. The tools are known. They've been there for a long time. They're fairly robust. There's no not as much of a learning curve as we used to have. And realistically, I just don't see you doing CRM things from outside of CRM, strictly because, like I said, the environment is just not as, I'm not going to say pleasant to work in, but it's just different. Okay. One of the things that you're going to see a lot about probably in the future here shortly is PowerApps Flow and Common Data Model. So this is from a Microsoft article that, again, I'll include in the show notes. And if you didn't notice, so we have this thing called the Common Data Model, which is surfaced within Flow as the Common Data Service. And this is a way of moving data from Dynamics CRM into the Common Data Model and then into Dynamics 365 operations or financials. So there's not a link directly into those. So what they're doing is they put data into the Common Data Model and then move it over into one of the others, and vice versa. So in this infographic here, what they're doing is they're showing the flow for creating a Power App that can speak to CRM, or a Power App that will speak into Dynamics AX, and then having a flow between those, or flow to the Common Data Model, etc. So these components are all going to be working together at some point in the future, okay? Which is actually right now, but I think it's going to be more so when we start getting more into it. So let's go and look at some stuff. How about that? I can find my window. Okay. So this is Microsoft Flow. This runs as a web app or a mobile app on phones and tablets for both Android and iOS. So we can actually do stuff within those. This designer is, in all honesty, a little bit on the clunky side. And the reason it's on the clunky side is because when you do things, it will go out and do things behind the scenes and in what they call an asynchronous manner. It's not very good about telling you it's doing anything. So what happens is it ends up kind of locking up the interface and making you click everywhere and say lots of words that you're not supposed to say and doing other things like that. And so I'm sure they'll get better with time as time goes on. But just be aware it's a little bit clunky. So again, the way that you do stuff is you can actually start with a template, okay, which is any of these things here. And these are all the ones for dynamic. So like I said, there's 24 of them or 30 something of them. And, they can do pretty much anything you can think of. These, I think, were just some kind of representative samples of here's what I want to do stuff here. So like if I wanted to configure, what would be a good one here? What we can do. How about, I don't like that one, like that one. Well, that's an interesting one. How about that? Let's try that one. So it's going to go to Twitter, and then go to Dynamics 365. We click on Use as Template. And we got two things here. We are going to see, basically, we're going to go connect to Twitter, and then we're going to connect to Dynamics 365. You notice you already see my login information in there, or my access, like so my Twitter handle, and then my email for one of my CRM organizations. This is all handled. Most of the time, what it appears is once you sign into a service, it will create a connection and store that information. So here is I'm connected to Dynamics 365. I'm connected to the push notifications. I started playing with GoToWebinar. I didn't finish that, etc. So these are all the ones that we can talk to later on. Okay. So again, it's basically just recording this information. So it's going to connect to those. I said, okay, that's fine. I can switch the accounts if I want, or check the permissions, etc. I click continue. So I can say, okay, I'm going to look for MS Dyn 365. It's going to get the user from Twitter. I need to pick an organization, which pick my main organization, not the previews. Now, did everybody see that delay that popped up? That delay is what caused me a lot of pain and suffering because I couldn't figure out what was going on. And you start clicking and it goes crazy. So anyway, this one popped up pretty quick. Sometimes when you're doing like custom, stuff without a template, it takes a little bit longer. I do not know if that is a caching issue or not. So I don't know how much the Flow application actually caches, say, metadata and things like that. It did bring up I've been in it all morning, so it brought up the organization list pretty quick. Again, a lot of these things, just the way that they write stuff now is done in asynchronous manner, so it doesn't, like I said, do a very good job of telling you it's doing something. It just sits there. And again, sometimes it'll lock up the interface. Sometimes it won't. That's the scary one, because you'll start doing things and then realize all of a sudden it will flash in front of you and it got back to this answer and started working. So here is how you fill this stuff out. So they have some dynamic data components, or dynamic content, I guess how they say it. And what the dynamic content is things that will come back from different operations. So as we can see here, this is from the step that says get user. Here's one for when the tweet appears. And what this is doing is actually pulling data from whatever service. So when you created the trigger, it connects to a service. That service defines what data will be returned back to you as part of the configuration. So I'm going to do a search for MS Dyn 365, and that is going to return back to the description of the user, the location of the user, the name of the user, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the name of the user, and I'm going to add that as the company name. And then the topic is Twitter user, and then the last name is the name, because I think the name is technically the full name of the user. I don't think Twitter actually specifies a first last name, so that's going to take a little bit of work. And with this, we're pretty much done with the configuration, and then I can click on Create Flow, And what it was telling me was, there we go. We already have one out there with that name. So anyway, so then what would happen is if I went over to the Twitter, now I have two of these running, so tell you what, let me go fix that real quick, just for giggles. Okay, I'm going to turn that off right there, just like that, just a little toggle switch there. Go back to my Twitter. Okay, so there's that. Now, the speed at which the data appears inside of Dynamics 365 or CRM in this case, as you can tell, is going to be dependent on the service itself. So I don't know about some of these, how fast they work. The ones for CRM are pretty quick. This one I don't know. There we go. So it took about 30 seconds or so. And if we open it up, we have our tweet that we did. Here's my name. Again, it put it in the last name field. And then what is funny about this is if I go to manage my flows, when a record is created, send a push notification. If I can do this. It's going to show up. 1 second. Oops. No, I'll do it in a minute. Sorry, I was going to show you my mobile phone, but my pairing had turned off. So anyway, so this was another flow that I created. So what happened is, this is basically when a lead gets created, I'm going to send a push notification. I got that on my phone at the same time. Okay. So again, went and created the record for us, and then again, we could have filled in any of the fields that we wanted to within the lead, basically by pulling data out of the whatever services we were connected to. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so let's go create one from scratch here. So let's do about when a record is deleted, and I'm going to configure this. Oops, I'll get on leads because I don't want to use leads. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to add an action. So what do we have for text? I think the problem is I'm not going to use the Twilio. So basically, Twilio is a SMS service, but you have to have an account for that. So I'm just going to use this push notification because push notifications don't cost anything. See what? So hang on 1 second. Let me get my phone configured. Come on, you can do it. Well, I thought I was going to do that. Where'd it go? One second here. Just love demo sets. Live demo with hardware. That's always a good time. Okay. Put that over there. I'm going to go and I'm going to delete this lead here. It is really slow. Come on, you can do it. Nope, not going to work. Oh, there we go. Hang on. One more time. If it don't work this time, then I'm just going to tell you that it works and you're going to have to trust me. How about that? Got a feeling we got a conflict. But anyway, if it did work, I just got a thing that says new lead was deleted. So anyway, you're going to trust me on this. It does work. Okay, let's exit that. So anyway, so the idea here is we can actually create different things that basically will allow us to do things. Now again, these are things that are taking data that's happening in one system and creating a record or another type of thing in a different system. That is where I think the value of flow lies. Again, not doing CRM stuff. Sanford said he has lots of conflicts. So Andrew says it looks like you need to configure any mobile app that need to have push notifications. Example, all sales managers get a push notification when a new opportunity is closed. Yeah, you could do that as well. Absolutely. And like I said, what it's going to do, it's actually going to send it to the actual app. So what you do is you load the Flow app, and then what it will do is actually run. It will basically pop up on your phone, but it's coming from that app. So another one, what you can do is things that start with a button. So this one manages to trigger off of that. You know what, I'm going to try this one more time just for giggles because I'm just silly like that. Okay, one more time. Bring my code up. Oops. Okay, now it says it worked. There. Yeah, it's not refreshing. Okay. Yeah, I think I got a conflict with my GoToMeeting. Anyway, so what happens is you end up with this. If you go back to the app, you end up with this series of buttons on the app itself, and each one has a name. And all you do is you click it, and like for this one, what we'll do is it will actually uh, basically do things one at a time. So this one is actually searching for tweets. And again, it's looking for MS-DIME 365, and then it's looking through those. There's some options here where it's going to basically look for 10 of those. And then there's a option that will allow you to actually loop through the result set. And what that does is, like, what it's going to do is says apply to each. So for each item returned from this, so up to 10 of these, it's going to get the user, create a new CRM record, as you can see here, going to create a lead, and then I don't have it populated, but it will populate the data here and loop through those. And then there's another one, and what it will do is actually send you a push notification as well. So again, there's a lot that can be done here. Some of the configurations are really complicated. Some of them are very, very simple. I think the biggest thing is you have to know enough about each of the services you're working with to make a decision about how you want to use it, and you have to understand the data that's coming back, because it may not be obvious what it's asking you. Some of these are kind of cryptic in the way they've designed them, but again, that's what happens when you have developers designing things. Cheatnaz, can this be integrated into any mobile app like WhatsApp? I don't think so, because basically this is just sending a notification to the app itself on the phone. Allison asks if it works with on-premises over IFD. I don't know. You want to go find out? Well, you know what? I don't have a thing I can do that with. So basically what you would do there is you go to your connections, and you would create a new connection. Dynamics 365. I got a feeling it's only going to be online. Yeah, that's an online login. So at this point, I would say it's only that. And that connector I showed you earlier is only going to be working with SQL and SharePoint, not Dynamics 365. So, if you wanted to pull data out at the database layer level, you could do that, but not from the CRM layer using the API. That's a good question, though. So anyway, any of these that have the thing where you start with a button tap, those will again end up on your app. And again, you can start it from there. You can actually do design on your app. I wish my thing had worked, but yeah, you can do design on your app. You can see notifications that have come in. You can, like I said, edit flows and things like that. So it's a pretty robust environment. They make changes to it all the time, as with any of the online properties. There are a lot of them that they're actually making changes pretty quickly. Jerry says that Dynamics on-premises CRM support for on-premises SQL connector is on the roadmap, but a ways out. Yeah, I can see that. And Jeffrey says, do you know if you could create a flow that would look at an account address and look it up in Zillow and return the square footage of the home? Dude, that is a total Zillow question. So again, what has to happen with these things is we have to have a service that supports it. So I don't think Zillow is here. Nope. But if you look at some of them, like, so what do we have here? These are all productivity things. FTP, Paper, Instagram, Pinterest. Yeah, so basically what has to happen is, and I don't even know if Zillow has an API, but what would happen is you would have to create a custom service, which you can do by going to services. It's called custom API. And what you do here is you actually create what you're seeing in the flow designer. So a lot of the Azure properties are using a file format called Swagger, which is it's a what they call a JSON or JavaScript object notation formatted file that describes how this thing works. And what it is, it's a standard to be able to plug in web services into another service. So you have to create the Swagger file, and there's lots of information here about how to do that. You get your icon, put the description, and again, you're creating a web service. So you create the web service, you put it inside of, say, Azure, for instance, and then here's the host and the URL that you use to get to that, and then you go and configure what data it accepts and what data it returns. And then from that, it can show up on your list. I do not know exactly how to make your custom things show up on the service list. There may be some kind of approval process. Last time I talked to somebody about that, that was on the roadmap, but it wasn't there as yet. Because one of the things that we want to do, if we go back, let me go back to the templates here, Dynamics. Okay, so I want to copy accounts to the common data service. Well, I have a customer in Dallas that I'm working with, and we're doing that for them. Then I've got a customer in Phoenix that I'm doing with. Well, we may have to actually recreate that from scratch. There's no way to clone at this point a flow or copy it and put it in their flow library. I do not think that is, I think that's on, again, from a conversation, that's on the roadmap, but not in existence at this point. Okay, so a few drawbacks there. But back to the Zillow thing, I don't know if Zillow has an API. If not, like several of the real estate things, if you get a license, you can actually pull that data. But you would probably have to write that service and then basically do the query yourself, pull the data, and then make that that square footage field available as a return item. And then people could use that in a flow. Oh. So Sanford put in, yeah, there is a API for Zillow. Well, that's pretty cool. Oh, Munir did the same thing. That's funny. So they do have an API. So now, just from personal experience, remember Zillow is not exactly tied into all the real estate places, so sometimes the information they have is not exactly correct and not exactly up to date. Do not form a company based on Zillow data, strictly because, again, real estate people are very, very protective of their data. So just, I'm just giving you a word of advice there. Not that I've spent a lot of time looking at these things, but I'm just telling you. So anyway, that's pretty much it. Like I said, what this is for is to move data in and out of the separate systems. Okay, again, I would really and truly not spend a lot of time moving this doing stuff of strictly that's of pure CRM nature. Where I think the value is by pulling things in from other systems. Like for instance, if I wanted to create a new flow here. Like I use Click Dimensions with my webinars. So I've got the connector for GoToWebinar connected. So what happens is, and why I'm able to actually interact with you on a very easy and frequent basis is, when you sign up for a webinar, you automatically get added as a contact to CRM. Okay, so I don't have to do anything besides configure the connector. They do all the dirty work for me. Well, what if I didn't have that? Well, as a matter of fact, there is a webinar connector, and it has two triggers: when a webinar is created or when a webinar person registers for a webinar. Again, this is a premium service. I keep clicking on these buttons. I have no idea what exactly is going to happen to my bill. I hope I don't actually accidentally sign up for something. Okay, so connect to go to webinar. Now allow them to do that. And I don't have webinar key. Put the key, and then I have to have a webinar. Oh, that's probably it. It's right there. Okay. I'm going to add action. Oops. Going to create a new record. Pick my organization. Pick my entity. Again, I'm going to create a lead. Okay. So this is pulling out standard GoToWebinar data. So basically, GoToWebinar has a web API, web API or an API that you can request. This is the default information that's pulled back from stuff. And if I wanted to get the other information, and again, it depends on what you have them ask for. So, this is just the standard information. This is not the custom fields that like I have you enter. So basically, the last name there, I would have to use the person's last name here. And then what I could do for their email address is the email. And then if I can find it, this is sorted in a very odd way that I don't actually understand. So it's not in alphabetical order. If you click that additional fields, there's first name. I get that from the first name of restaurant there. And then what that's going to do is going to create a new lead there. Okay, company name. I don't have a company name feeding in from my GoToWebinar. So I can I'll just put their first name, space, and their last name. Is that working? Okay, there we go. Okay, so now what happens is when somebody registers for once I say this, when somebody registers for this particular webinar, and again, you saw me pick the name, it's going to create a new lead for this person within my CRM system. Now, who can tell me what the main problem with this is? Anybody? Beeler? Did my mic go off? Free espresso and a puppy for the first person to answer. Yeah, Kurt got it. No duplicates. Checking. So what will happen is a lot of you on the phone today are at many of my webinars, and I really appreciate you for coming, by the way. But what will happen is, say Rob's on every webinar, or both Robs are on every webinar, and basically I would end up with 100 Robs. Okay. Why I like to click dimensions is it looks to see if you're already there. If you're already there, it just basically appends to your record and creates a new event participation thing. So that's all great. But in this case, we don't have any duplicate checking, at least none I've seen. So you would have to do duplicate checking manually, which is a drawback. Okay. Now, if you don't have click dimensions and you have a flow, and this, you can afford the $15 or $7 a month, whatever it is, to get this done, maybe that's okay for you. So it really kind of depends. Cindy asked if it will only add the last name. It's going to add basically first name, last name for the company, last name there, email there, and then first name way down here. And I could fill in any of the other fields, but as you can see, this is all that we get out of the list from GoToWebinar. Like for instance, I have you fill out some custom fields. One, it helps me track where people are coming from, which is really fascinating. Where people in the world are attending these things, but it also I found a couple years ago there's a thing called webinar spam, and I actually had fake people being registered for webinars. For what purpose, I have no clue, but it was happening to a point where it was causing me a problem. So anyway, so the moment that I add those custom fields that you had to fill out, that just totally went away. So my custom fields are not there because I asked for your city, your state, and your country, and those are not listed. These are only, like I said, the default fields that come from there. And like I said, if when you're using Click Dimensions, you actually have a full range of there's a ton of fields that are built into the GoToWebinar system directly, and it will also take the custom field values that you request and also add those as data points within that. In fact, I've got a couple of workflows that kind of move some of the data from a custom field over to the standard CRM contact field that I might show you later if you want to. Anyway. Erwin asked, "Do you know how much time it would take when the record is created?" It's actually pretty speedy. I did a test earlier, and it showed up within a few seconds, quite honestly. And that was a manual. I started it from my phone, and let's see here. It's kind of funny. Let's go look at this. We got some activity here. Oh. Before I leave today, you remind me to go turn that flow off because I've got a bunch of people in my lead system that I probably don't want there. But this shows it's working. Yeah. So yeah. So let's see. Create a new record. Let's see. Company first name. I'm typing on my phone, by the way. I know you can't see me. Last. Okay, it said it got done. That was pretty freaking immediate right there. That was from the phone. So basically what it did is that it started off with a button press, and then it asked me for the first name, the last name, and the company, and it did that within probably less than a second. Really, by the time it took for me to put the phone down and hit the refresh button, it was already inside CRM. Yeah, Jerry said, yeah, it'll consume my allowance pretty quick, so I think I'll just go and uh, take that off. So actually, I better go turn all these off. I don't even know why half these do. I don't want them to do. Yeah, so it'll take your allocation out and then do other fancy stuff. So yeah. John brought up a thing, like I created that, we're working on that flow for that one webinar. Yes, you would have to do it every single webinar because it's tied to a specific webinar. So that's one drawback is you have to set it up. And again, it's kind of a bit of work to do that. Like I said, I like Click Dimensions strictly because I use it for everything, and that's just one of the benefits. I mean, I've got this entire system laid out. I actually had a webinar on that last year, and I got like for me to do a webinar from beginning, and this is like the planning stage, from beginning to production of the webinar and then the follow up and stuff. It's like 30, somewhere between 30 and 40 steps to do a webinar. So a lot of that is automated as much as I can. I'm going to create some custom code modules to actually automate more of it in the future. There's a few things that I've semi-automated, but then there's a technology hole I have to go programmatically fill up. So there's all that. But most things happen automatically. The way it works right now, and a lot of the manual process is just the pure creation of it. There's a couple things that I wish Click Dimensions would add. It would make my life a little bit easier, but it's just me, and so I've said, hey, can you do this? I'm like, well, yeah, it's on the list. So okay, so that's pretty much it. What questions do you guys have today? Urban asks, does the flow respect your user role? That is a good question, and one that I haven't explored recently. Um, One of those, I thought it said we could check the permissions. Maybe I have to create from a template. Okay. So basically, this is creating from a template. It says view permissions. That's SharePoint. This one. Oh, that's what it's. doing so. This is the permissions of the app for within CRM. So that is a good question. I've got a sneaky suspicion that you would get an error when you tried to do stuff. Yeah, you would probably get an error. Let's see what is. So Kurt asks, basically, this gives CRM more landing pages. You know, Kurt, not really, because there's nothing to see. This is 100% server side. Besides the thing that shows up in the app, so this is all happening behind the scenes. So most of it's like you're getting data from other places. So like for instance, like if you had one of the things from one of the flows that I was showing you from Twitter. Remember we had all these things show up. If your company had a hashtag, what you could say, probably what I would do is I would actually create a custom entity called a tweet. And then I would try to associate that tweet to a person. So I would, if they tweeted about my company using that hashtag, I would go and pull that and then create a tweet and associate with that person and then have somebody in my social media group, which, I have a vast social media group if you guys didn't know. And I would have them look at that and see what they had to say. Or you could just install social engagement and have it do it for you. That's what I'd really truly do. Peter asked where the error message would show. Peter, I'm pretty sure they show right in the designer. Either while you're configuring the step, it's usually at the top. It's where it lasts. When you figure a step, say like that one right there, it'll put the error message up here. Or sometimes it'll turn this, turn the bar from a gray or a blue or whatever color it is into a red and have a little circle on it. That's where it goes. Andrew says hoping for a replacement for timed workflows and CRM. Yeah, you could do that. Actually, part of the thing I'm going to show you, show notes is a link to how to run that workflows via time. That would work, but there are also other solutions that fit inside CRM that may be better for that. It really kind of depends on the situation. Anything else? Anybody has any questions on? Nope. But like I said, this has got a lot of potential, especially of getting data in and out of CRM. There's a lot of stuff that we have available to us that will get us some, things like the file system. There's one for WordPress, so when you have a blog created, I can see you actually getting that and actually doing something like, creating an email from that. It's just an email to everybody. I mean, that's a possibility. There's all kinds of things you can do there. And again, it's kind of a big playground. There's lots of pumps. You think about this. We've got 91 services that we can connect to. I mean, surely you can find a way to plug something together. Okay. Any other questions? Well, if not, then I really appreciate your time today. And like I said, I'll send you out an email with stuff on later today.